Hello to everybody in the Gordano Valley circuit. My name is Kirsty. I'm the families worker at Nailsea and Backwell Methodist Churches, part of the circuit, and I'm here because, God, I feel, is calling me to candidate for ministry, and as somebody within your circuit, you would be my sending circuit. I know that a lot of the meetings are not being held at the moment. I've preached in the evenings at quite a few of the churches as I've trained to become a local preacher, which I passed just just before the lockdown, so I haven't seen you since. But for many in the morning services you won't have seen me because, of course, as a families worker I've been running junior churches at Nailsea and Backwell Methodist Churches in the mornings, and I've only been out in the evenings. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself. I will need the support of the circuit, and especially in prayer, but also in votes at the circuit meeting in order to proceed on the candidating journey. And I thought it's very hard to do that if you have no information about who I am or what it is that is making me take this path. So that's who I am. You're welcome to stop the video there, or you can listen to a bit more of my story if you like. Yes, thank you. From a very young age, I was very aware of God's presence in my life and His hand over my life. I was really fortunate in being brought up in a Brethren church. Now, the Brethren church, for those of you who don't know, the church I grew up at did not allow women to speak in church, and I felt that was totally right and acceptable. We didn't have any ministers at all because everybody was equal and equally able to preside over communion and equally able to share. There was no local preachers' courses. I wore a hat to church every day. But what it did do was give you a very, very in-depth knowledge of the Bible, something that I think has stood me in good stead. It also didn't baptise infants, so I became a Christian and I read that verse in the Bible that said, "Believe and be baptised," and I read it and I just thought, this is my chance. This is my chance to do something for God, and I don't need to question whether or not it's right because it's written here in black and white. It's my opportunity to stand up and tell people that I believe in Jesus and that I follow Him, that He is my Saviour and my Lord. So I requested to be baptised in the church, and I was really fortunate. My father and my grandfather were both elders in the church, so my father preached and my grandfather baptised me, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. It was one of the most important days of my life when I got to stand there and tell my school friends and my church friends, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And I think that has really been a great springboard in my life, in being willing to share about my faith with others and being excited to do it, because it was such an incredible first experience of that. But because of my Brethren beginnings, I definitely grew up thinking, well, I won't ever go into Christian work. If God wanted me to be a Christian worker, I'd have been born male. I believed that He was going to take me to do something important, but it didn't ever occur to me that I would ever be preaching in a church or wanting to candidate as a minister. I went off to, I didn't go off to university, I stayed in Cardiff University, and in my third year I had quite a difficult year. It was a year when my grandfather, those of you who go to the evening services will have heard me talk about him a lot, he died and was brought back to life. He died from a heart attack, and his girlfriend, my grandmother had already died, so his girlfriend at the time had a stroke, and my cousin was taken into hospital, and our dog died, and a very dear Christian friend, Gaynor Roberts, had a stroke and she died, all in the space of a few months. And it was at that time that I learnt a really important lesson about God and about my journey with Him. I felt that I was doing all of the right things. I felt that I was running the youth work and the children's work, and I was attending small groups and helping to keep those going. I was very involved at my church. I was very involved in praying in the local community. I was going and attending prayer groups each day, and yet God wasn't fixing everything. And I think that had been my expectation. I'd grown to a point where I thought that my actions determined what reward I got from God, and it was at that point that I really realised it's not about me. You know, I'm never going to be good enough to earn anything from God. Everything He gives me is a free gift. And that lesson has stuck with me, and it's important because I really don't feel good enough to be a minister. You know, people look at ministers' lives and you think, gosh, they are fantastic. They read the Bible, they pray every day, they care for so many people, and especially in our circuit, we've got some fantastic ministers and they seem so great. And I'm not coming from a position of great strength, if I'm honest, in thinking about my spiritual journey. I've had so many blessings and I've not always lived up to where I think I should have expected to be. But I'm coming from a place where I know that it's not about who I am, that God is able to use me exactly as I am. So I'm using that, I think, as quite a key a key point in my candidating, because it's the truth of what God has been saying to me. I had an incredible experience a while after university. I had been working for a Christian charity, Christian Youth Ministries in Ipswich, in a job that I loved, but it was 16-hour days. They were very long days, 5 days a week, and I was tired after 3 years of doing it. I loved it, but I didn't have anything else to give. And my local church, which was a Baptist church at the time, offered me a job, and I was really keen to take it. And I heard God say, it's hard to explain how you hear God say, but I felt like there was no other option. He said to me, go to Malawi. And if I looked at working for the church, when I looked at the other options that were available at the time, I had this huge sense of guilt. And when I thought about going to Malawi, I had this sense of just release and that it was right. My conscience was clear when I was thinking about it. But I didn't want to go, so I made a bargain with God. I prayed with my minister and I said, well, God, I don't have the money to go to Malawi. If you give me the money, then I'll go, and if not, I'll stay here in my nice house that I enjoy and the lifestyle I have and the church I love. And I got home and there was a cheque for £1,000 on the doorstep from a family I'd not seen for years and years and years. They'd had a daughter who had died, who was the same age as me when she was very young, and in memory of her, on a particular birthday, they'd sent me this cheque out of the blue. And I think that's something that's also carrying me through, the knowledge that there's so much about candidating for ministry that I don't know and that I can't provide from myself, but I'm confident that God will be with me and will provide the support I need, the knowledge I need, the people around me to pray for me. And the home, if I end up in Birmingham studying, I'm trusting that if God is wanting me to go, He is going to be with me and He is going to be providing those things. He's going to be making me good enough, well, not making me good enough, but He's going to be making it for my weaknesses, but also providing for me on this journey. The other lesson I wanted to share with you is one that I've recently put in my videos to my own church. Was coming back from Malawi. I thought I was going to be there for a couple of years, and after 9 months, I just kept hearing from everybody, your mother needs you at home, which was a very unusual message to hear. My mother is not somebody who's particularly needy. She's got 3 sons as well as me, so it was an odd message to get. And then finally my mum emailed me and just asked me when I was coming home, which isn't something that she would usually do. She's always given us great independence and helped us to be as self-sufficient as possible. But I felt this was a message from God. So I went home and I saw the family, and I took my youngest brother, who was in the army at the time but on leave, and my parents, well, they took me, and we went and visited all of my cousins and all of the family. And a week later, God sent my youngest brother was sent to Afghanistan with the army, and we weren't allowed to tell anybody. It was a secret mission at the time, and it was quite a dangerous one. So I had come back from Malawi just in time to be there to see him off. And the day after I got back from Malawi, my local church in Cardiff that I'd attended for a while had a job, and I thought, this is clearly God's plan for me. And I waited quite a long time. It took them a couple of months to get back to us all, and I finally went for an interview. And because I was so sure that this was God's plan for me, I didn't look at anything else. I stayed at my parents' house in Cardiff, and I was there with my mum and dad the entire time that my youngest brother was in Afghanistan. And just as my brother was coming back, I got the message that I hadn't got the job. And I was really sort of shaken and really bemused at this message from God that I was going to be here in Cardiff and have this job at the church I knew and loved, and felt that I would have fitted in really well hadn't happened. But actually, God had given me the message I needed to be in the place that I was. If he hadn't told me, if I hadn't heard that message of, here's a job, apply for it, I wouldn't have stayed where I was. I don't like being idle, and I've been applying everywhere. And the job that I have that definitely was right, coming into Nailsea and Backwell, would have taken me away from my parents at a time that I was needed there. So my point in this long rambling story, apologies, I am confident that God is calling me to candidate for ministry, and I don't know what the end purpose is. I don't know whether I'm going to be accepted. I don't know whether I will complete the 2 years. I don't know whether I'll be stationed anywhere, but I know that right now what I have to do is to explore this process, and I'm really confident of that. And I can't, as I said, I can't make promises about the future, but your prayers would be incredibly appreciated, and I'd be very grateful for them during this process. I was really fortunate that I got the job at Nailsea and Backwell Methodist Church, and it has taught me so much. Methodism wasn't a denomination I'd ever really had any experience of at all before. I always sort of classed it closer to the Anglicans and the Catholics, who were so different to my brethren upbringing. And in the time that I've been here, I've firstly been incredibly impressed by the unity that I found in the Methodist churches, and to be honest, the lack of politics that I've seen so often in other churches that just didn't seem to exist here. People were open and honest with each other, accepting of each other, and that has been incredible. I've been really blessed to have a minister who is amazing. I'm sure you all know Deborah Mallet. Sorry, Debs, I didn't tell you I was including you in the video. But having a female minister has challenged a lot of my traditional thinking from growing up. And you cannot be in any doubt that Deborah has been called to the place that she's in. I can see God at work in her and in the way that she works day after day. And it's opened my eyes a bit to the possibility that God speaks to us in so many different ways, and the Bible says women should be silent in church, but God might be speaking in a way that overrides that, if that makes sense. And that's been a really tough journey, especially when I first applied to do the local preaching course. I found it really difficult to think that I would be going against that verse in scripture that had been embedded in me at such a young age, and that I'd been so willing to accept for so long. And it was a real lesson in the fact that I am not following a rule book. I'm in communication with a God who wants to be my friend, who wants to work with me and wants to have a relationship with me above and beyond my expectation and my previous experiences. And it's made me more willing to listen and to try to be sensitive to what he's saying to me outside of my expectation of what he might be saying to me. Yeah, and on the local preachers course, I highly recommend it for anybody who's called to be a local preacher. Somebody has put thousands of hours of work into it. It is brilliant. And they tell you the history of Methodism, and I was so drawn to the beginnings. It was these students who said, look, we have got a world full of people who don't know Jesus, and we're stuck in these walls in our church. Let's go out, let's go and tell them. Let's make sure that our faith isn't just determined by a Sunday morning, an hour on a Sunday morning in these walls. Let's go and live it out. Let's go and have compassion for people. Let's go and show people what God's love looks like. There's lots of things about Methodism that don't quite match the thinking that I've held for most of my life, but I cannot deny that spirit of Methodism is fantastic. And I can see why God might be choosing Methodism for me above some of the other denominations. It is a denomination that is very clearly thought out, with clear structures and space for people to bring their own experiences of God, but also structure and they do everything deliberately, and things are thought through really carefully. Now that is not my usual nature. I am somebody who rushes into things and likes to get creative and does things very quickly. And I think it's probably important for me that I have that structure, because it means that my strengths can thrive in a place where the weaknesses are sort of held by the church. There are structures and ways of doing things that are in place that are going to stop me from being too crazy in my wanting to express my faith, but will give me space to do that safely, and will give me opportunities to work with people who work in a really different way, which means that we will be stronger as a team. So that's who I am, and that's some of the little bits of my journey that's got me to where I am now. I've talked to Russell Herbert, our Superintendent Minister, and I've had my 4-way meeting, which means that I've discussed how I would do a placement and how I would do a portfolio. I'm still very much at the very beginning of the candidating process, and even applying to candidate for ministry. This is going to take a year. It won't be until September 2021 if I get through the interviews and my portfolio passes and all of that sort of thing happens. It's going to be a long journey, but I hope that you might be willing to help me on my journey and to support me and encourage me and vote for me to get through if that's what you think God is saying is right, and most importantly to pray for me. Thank you so much for giving me this time to share with you. I hope you're all keeping safe and well at home and managing to be in contact with your churches. I know that my membership card is becoming more and more important to me, as I don't get to see all of the people who are in membership with me at my church. Well, God bless you, and yes, thank you again. Have a lovely day. Bye.